Hi, welcome to Clarke Antiques. Let's take a step inside and have a look around. Welcome to our online exhibition, The Salute. And as you can see from the catalogue, this is where we get our title from. So let's have a little walk around and see if we can point out a few things to you which are of interest. Well, first of all, we've got a very good early 19th century campaign desk, lovely skeletal handles. Now, there's a lot of desks out there that purport to be campaign, but actually they're not truly campaign desks. This one is, it's got good carrying handles on the side, and they are for carrying rather than moving it around the library. And it's a nice, clean example. And this chair, which is around about 1840s, works very well with it. Now, there's a number of different campaign chests in the exhibition. This one's got a good provenance, a Lieutenant de Soimeres, and they were quite a big family in Guernsey, supplying lots of officers to both the Army and the Navy. So we've got a few different examples over quite a range of ages of different travel cutlery. Nice continental silver set here, which goes in this rolled up leather pouch. Interesting silver penknife, Sheffield 1863. Much later Sheffield set again, stainless steel, but quite a nice design. Quite an unusual little case set, which has got a little travel beaker which goes through it. Now, our exhibition title comes from this wonderful Panorama Watercolor, which really is quite an unusual size. So let's move that and have a bit of a closer look at it. So, as you saw from the cover of our catalogue, this is where we get our title from. This soldier saluting an officer. But the more you look at this picture, the more you see. It really is quite wonderful. We've got fishing boats over here, a lot of water on this side, coming along through here as well, and on the other side, which suggests maybe it's an island or peninsula. You've got a small town with a church with a stockade around it. Lots of little busy scenes going on. You've got a gentleman walking out with his lady and their dog here. You've got more soldiers talking. Lots of tents in the background. A little sort of storage centre here with a couple of flags above it, and there's one more of those as well further on. Here we've got a farm labourer or a worker perhaps, carrying something on his back with his dog, going about his business. Somebody with a wheelbarrow, lady with her child and some kindling wood. Again, another English flag, and it is the earlier English flag, which helps us to date it. Lots and lots of tents, so quite a strong army presence. More water over here with a couple of gentlemen looking out at a boat coming in, and we can see that there's a windmill up here as well. Now, where exactly this scene is, we're not 100% sure. It kind of feels like it could be North America, possibly Canada, very late 18th century. Perhaps it's not, perhaps it's Europe somewhere, but certainly all of this water and the coastline kind of feels like it is North America and that period. But really, it's quite an unusual size for a watercolour. Hopefully from the video you get an idea of that. And really is a very detailed and interesting picture. We've got a couple of packing cases here. Now, originally these would have had a campaign chest that they would go with, and as we've done with this SW silver secretaire chest in the middle, once you unpack the chest from these cabinets, you put the chest in the middle between the two and you bolt them together. But of course you can also use them independently, and looking at their size, they really are quite practical for use. You've got a lot of storage space in here, and they're a good pedestal shape size. So this is another one of the chests in the exhibition. SW Silver, very good maker, operating through most of the 19th century. We've got a second chest by SW Silver as well in the exhibition, and if you look at the catalogue or look online, you'll be able to compare the two. It's quite nice to be able to have two at the same time, just to be able to compare them. So if we go to this corner, this is a very comfortable chair. The design is by Ross & Co. It's not marked by the maker. Maybe they made it, maybe they didn't. We don't know. What we do know though is that with its sprung seat and the shape to the back, it's a very, very comfortable chair, and any officer who was lucky enough to have that on campaign certainly would be able to relax at the end of the day. This is a very interesting table, and it's one of 4 good bits of Georgian campaign furniture in the exhibition. It's always nice to have some earlier bits. Typically they look more like domestic furniture rather than the later items from say 1850s onwards that have developed more of their own sort of campaign look. So this table, tripod table, the legs all fold up, and also the top can be raised or lowered to suit your height. So really quite an interesting, versatile bit of furniture. Another unusual bit. Now it's possible that this was made in an army workshop. The locks are stamped with a broad arrow, which certainly suggests it might have been made in a military establishment. And it's a slightly unusual design, which also suggests that. So we've got a very large loafer on the side here, as you can see. The top flips over, and you can extend the size of the top to make it much more practical for working. We think probably for use on board a ship, not 100% sure, but certainly an interesting and useful size, again, for modern use. Feet unscrew, they're removable, so the height can be reduced as well. We always like our dispatch boxes. This is quite a nice one, good size, and nice title on the top, Legislative Council of Jamaica with the Crown. There's another one here. They're both made by Whitworth, who were the biggest makers really of dispatch boxes. Possibly it was personal ownership, initialed AP on the top. And this is sitting on quite an interesting colonial table, which dismantles with both legs unbolting to pack down to really quite a small size. But we can see they've really gone to a lot of trouble with all of this very decorative carving to the legs here. And sitting with that, of course, you need to have a colonial chair. This one's made of rosewood, flat packs completely for travel. Interesting picture. It's dated 1891, and it was done by a lady called Alice Mander, and her husband was known as the father of the Indian Army around about that time, and this is the Poona horse, but really quite skilled. She was an amateur artist, but the quality of her work really is quite exceptional. In the exhibition we've got 3 interesting examples of kit bag locks, and they were very useful for any traveller just to fix their luggage to some railings. This is quite an unusual shape and size by Finnegan's in Manchester, also unusual to get a maker stamp on it. The middle one is made of steel. Most of the ones that you find are made of brass, so again that stands out a little bit. The last one is unnamed, but it does, like the other 2, have an internal lock, which makes it a little bit more practical for use. This is another campaign chest by SW Silver. Again, a secretaire, and quite a good example. Let's just open it up and have a quick look in here. So you've got a nice large space to work, and as you can see, you can get your laptop out, and that's quite practical and useful. Of course, as you would expect with SW Silver, the handles are all stamped with the maker's details. Now if we come across here, this is a very interesting piece of campaign furniture, the like of which we haven't seen before. Empty it's a huge weight, and we can see how well it's constructed. All of these wider than standard brass straps have got 8 screws to them. All the screws are lined up, which is a nice sign of quality. It is heavy, and if we open up the door, we can see inside that it's got 3 drawers. These are all fitted to take silver. We don't know who owned this. I would take a good guess that given the size of it and the fact that the legs remove, so that suggests maybe it even had a packing case to make it even heavier, but to protect it, that it could have been for regimental silver. Unfortunately, we can only guess at that. But certainly, if you've got a collection of silver, what better bit of furniture to house it in? It really is quite an unusual piece of campaign furniture, and a great height as well, actually. You've always got to think about how you can use antique furniture in modern life, and the height of this gives you a nice surface as well to put things on, as well as plenty of storage. So let's just shut that back up. An interesting teak rocking chair with a nice slung carpet seat, which was bespoke made for the owner. His initials are EB, and those are also written on the back of one of the stretchers in paint. Quite an interesting chair. Another campaign chest. Well, chests were figured walnut veneers to the front were probably top of the tree when they're first made, and not a lot has changed really. This is a very good looking chest. Great drawer configuration. 2 short drawers either side of the secretaire. And a very good looking campaign chest. What have we got on top of it? Well, this is a little bit unusual and different. A pair of balance scales. They all pack down into the drawer here for travel, to be nice and secure, and they're made by Utling of London. Interesting, unusual little bit of travel equipment. Well, this is quite an interesting contrast. This is another bit of the Georgian furniture in the exhibition, an early 19th century candle stand. But the turning is really quite fine. It's a very, very elegant piece. And sitting on top, what better thing to have than, of course, a candle. But this is interesting because it's a very utilitarian piece of travel equipment. It's Japan tin or tollware, would have been mass produced and very affordable, so perhaps owned by a soldier rather than an officer. But still, lighting was very important wherever you were, especially on campaign, and it would have been very useful to whoever owned it. So quite a nice contrast in the 2 pieces. This is an interesting table. This is from Sorrento in Italy. It wasn't made for an army officer for travel, but it was made for a tourist to pack down and bring it home easily. Most Sorrento ware that we see is much smaller and easier to pack down. This table, which has got 6,000 to 7,000 pieces of inlay on it, completely dismantled. So the top comes off, the legs are removable from the column, and it packs down to quite a small size, so the tourists could bring it home back to Britain, talk about it to their friends, and rather than showing holiday snaps, they can talk about the souvenirs that they brought back from their grand tour. Now, hiding inside this packing case at the bottom, we have got an old shop chest. So when you set up camp, the chest comes out, you screw legs to the bottom of the packing case, sit the chest on top, you put some moulding to the edges just to hold the chest in position and to finish it off nicely. And quite a nice bit of campaign furniture. That's made by the Army and Navy store. Unusual to find old shop chests with this painted faux wood finish, or as they called it, printed. Black oilcloth trunk by Insole, good West Country maker from Bristol, probably one of the better West Country makers. Now that brings us on to a star of the show, really. the third bit of Georgian campaign furniture, and this really is an exceptional Regency bookcase. Quite diminutive in size, as you can see. It's about the same height as me, and if you can swing around to the side, you'll be able to see how narrow it really is front to back. So once packed up, it's not going to take up as much size as a domestic bookcase, but it's going to be able to fit in an awful lot of books. And of course, no TV in those days, so what you do in the evening when you're set up in camp, you read books, and an officer would certainly have a big supply. Most campaign bookcases that we find were meant to sit on top of a campaign chest, and you only get the top half. So to be able to find a great Georgian full-size campaign bookcase really is, as a dealer, a joy. It's a wonderful piece of furniture, and we're very pleased to own it. A star of the show for sure. So let's move on quite a lot later in date, early 1800s rather, to probably 1920s, 1930s. Travel has moved on an awful lot. This is a little tea for two picnic set. Might have been used by a motoring enthusiast to go off for a drive in the country on a nice day. And these enamel cups, this water heater on a spirit burner, little sugar pot, all fits inside this leather case. So really packs down to quite a small size, but you could perhaps set up on the bank of a river, boil up some tea, have some nice refreshment when you're out driving in your vintage car. This is an exceptional Secretaire campaign chest. The maker's Greane. It's not stamped, but we've handled enough of his pieces and know enough about the attributes of his work to be able to recognise as it coming from his workshop. On the inside, we've got a bow-fronted set of drawers, which are walnut banded in tulip wood. Interesting little secret drawer in here, tucked away bottom short drawer. Very interesting maker, Greane, from Dublin, and really quite an exceptional campaign chest. Lovely to have that one in the exhibition. Now this is also an interesting table. It's not made to come apart, but we think that it was made for use on board ship. It's made of teak, early 19th century. Very unusual to get any domestic furniture made in teak, English domestic furniture made in teak at that date, which is one of the reasons it points to us towards it being made for a ship. But look at the side of the shape of the legs here. I mean, that really is a wonderful, pleasing shape as well. And if you go to our exhibition online, or have a look at the item on our website, campaignfurniture.com, also have a look at the stretcher. You've got a wonderful big bold stretcher there. Now, underneath these sledge feet there are cut out squares. That means one of two things. Either it had removable bund feet, but really if the rest of the table is not dismantling, why would you make the small bund feet removable? Or perhaps on board ship, perhaps in an officer's dining area, there were fixed to the floorboards little wooden squares which corresponded to the holes on the bottom of this table, so the table just sat in place and didn't move around in rough seas. We'll probably never be 100% sure, but it's certainly a very interesting table and quite a good size. Good for a hall or perhaps even a kitchen table. Now this is an iconic bit of campaign furniture. Of course, it's a Charles Greane stool. His patent was 1878. Quite a nice example. The legs come off, packed down to the underside of the seat, which then folds up and you end up with quite a smart little small case. And that takes us on to our final piece of furniture in the exhibition, our final and fourth piece of Georgian furniture. And that's this very nice little side table. We can see immediately that it's made to dismantle because we've got brass cut at the top of these nicely turned legs. But what's also interesting is that the top will double in size. Now normally with a domestic table you would expect the flaps to hang down by the side of the table. You don't want that with a campaign table, with this campaign table, because in order to get the full width when they're open, the sides are going to hang down much lower than the apron of the table. If they fold over onto the top, they're going to fit into a packing case much easier and reduce the size of the case while you're at it. So this is quite a nice, interesting Georgian table. And as I said before, we always like to find earlier bits of campaign furniture. They look more like domestic furniture, but the quality of the make is just outstanding. Well, that's the exhibition. I hope you've enjoyed this virtual walk around it. If you've got any questions about any of the things you've seen, go to our website, look at the items. There's lots of fantastic professionally taken photographs there. You can always drop us an email as well, get in touch, ask us what's on your mind. Simon and I will be very happy to help you.